Welcome, one and all, to episode 99 of Midweek News for October 31st, 2024. Let's get into it. Intel NPU driver for Linux is now available in the Snap Store. It's good to see Intel bring NPU support to Linux in an official capacity, but I'm not convinced that Snap was the best way. Hopefully this is just a first step and a more wide-reaching support program will come in the future. MALIBAL boycotts the Coreboot project. This is one story that keeps getting more bizarre. The owner or developer at a relatively unknown laptop rebadge operation known as MALIBAL has some harsh words for Coreboot. It seems this person is only giving one side of the story. Who would have guessed? And it is skewed to make MALIBAL look some sort of good way. Dig into it for yourself if you're sick of mainstream news coverage these days and need a break. It's a doozy. Kdenlive 24.08.2 is out. This is a bug fix release and addresses some regressions in the previous version. If you're a Kdenlive user, grab this update. The SiFive HiFive Premier P550 RISC-V board is now available for developers. You could probably guess by the name that this is a RISC-V developer board. A wider release is scheduled for December and will be preloaded with Ubuntu for the low price of $599. It's nice to see new platforms emerge and some variety and excitement return to the computing world at large. The fine folks over at LinuxSecurity.com bring us this great article on securing SSH. From the explanation of SSH key types to best practices for securing OpenSSH server, this article is a great starting point. OBS Studio version number announcement. The OBS project will now be adhering to the semantic version numbering of major, minor, patch. They describe this as the following. Major will have big breaking changes. Minor will be new features and improvements that don't have breakage, but do add something new, and patch will be hot fixes and other bugs that need attention. It will be nice to be able to depend on this starting with the upcoming 31 series. Newsflash! Windows 11 24.08.2 is a steaming pile of poo. From phantom disk usage to drastically increased login time, this has been an update fraught with issues. Specifically, if you have an Asus X415 or X515 system, you will want to exercise extreme caution. I can personally report that on some AMD mini PCs from B-Link, things have slowed down quite drastically. A Windows Debloat script, authored by Microsoft. This post on LXer mentions such a script, but does not provide a link at this time. I have not yet located it myself, but when I do, I will be sure to share it and perhaps look at it during a live stream. Linux vendor System76 announces Theilo Astra ARM64 computer powered by Ampere. This is great news for those who have projects based on ARM and need a high-end workstation to develop on. This 128-core monster machine is being aimed at autonomous vehicles, automotive safety systems, and software-defined vehicle development. Pricing was not readily available, but will likely sit somewhere between a Mac Studio and a Mac Pro. The 10 best cheap Steam games for Linux gamers. A few of the highlights include Civilization 6, Rocket League, Mad Max, and Cities Skylines. Check out the article for the full list. Gaming on Linux continues to heat up. The evolution of Linux package management and its impact on modern computing. Dating back to the early 1990s, package management on Linux has come a long way. Even Windows has a built-in package manager these days. Homebrew exists on macOS, but Apple still does not include a default package manager. The article is a nice trip down memory lane and a reminder of where some of these utilities that we take for granted today had their start. Parrot OS 6.2 Security Edition embraces Docker containers. While Kali continues to be on the front of people's minds when they think of a Linux security distribution, Parrot OS is no slouch. The idea of having a quick launch for Docker containers running various utilities is novel if nothing else. Time will tell if other distributions start down this road, leading to Docker, but it is an interesting development. AlmaLinux OS 10, a preview into what's coming. Built on CentOS Stream 10, has support for the x86-64 version 2 architecture alongside the default version 3 build. Spice has been re-enabled, which will be nice for those running in Proxmox, and it's available for download and preview now. Raspberry Pi AI Hat Plus delivers 26 TOPS of performance for $110. Just when people started to write off the Raspberry Pi for Intel and AMD mini PCs, they are back with a vengeance. The AI Hat Plus comes in two performance varieties. The 13 TOPS model will cost $70, and the 26 TOPS model will cost $110. The AI Hat uses the M.2 connector. It will be interesting to see what other announcements come for the Raspberry Pi before the end of 2024. Rumor has it that there will be a Pi 5 compute module coming at some point, but there has been no firm date announced as of this point in time. 5 reasons Krita is better than GIMP for creatives. Nothing like getting a few jabs in at a competitor before a major new version comes out. The article does, however, raise a few good points about the user interface. For instance, I'm not really the person to give a good review on either of these pieces of software. I will say that I've used GIMP for more than 20 years before Krita even existed. My use of GIMP is mainly for resizing images, and that is a function that has not changed significantly in a number of years. Your mileage may vary. The 10 best network inventory software for Linux. If there is one thing that Linux really excels at, that is humming along in the background running tasks. In the spirit of not putting all your eggs in one basket, it may be worth considering one of these solutions for your next network inventory project. I've heard of several of them over the years, but do not have a first-hand experience using them. Still, a good starting point if you have a use case that requires such software. The Linux file system. If you've been curious about all the directories on a Linux system, this is a good introduction. Perhaps not as straightforward as a drive letter system in Windows, the Linux file system has evolved from the Unix file system that originated at Bell Labs in the late 1960s and early 1970s, whereas Windows can trace its drive letter usage to CP/M in the mid-70s. We may deep dive into the Linux file system in an upcoming live stream. PZip10 has released with a revamped GUI engine and other new features. PZip is a free, open source, and cross-platform archive manager. You can take a look at the changelog for a more comprehensive list of the changes in this new version. And last but not least, no more Kali Linux 32-bit builds. It's the end of an era, and Kali has stopped building for 32-bit processors. This comes on the heels of more competition between Intel and AMD to move the x64 platform forward and remove more 16 and 32-bit instructions from future processors. And that will wrap up things for another episode of Midweek News. Keep an eye out for future live streams where I will be discussing some of these topics in more detail. We can also say goodbye to double-digit episode numbers. Next week, we move into triple digits. Stay tuned, we aren't done yet.